Hey guys, behind me we have the 2024 GX550. We're going to be installing our bumper on it today. Let's get started. All right, before we get started, we want to make sure we have all our pieces to the bumper. It comes with the front bumper, the main bumper, our two side wings, and our front faceplate. We also want to check all of our hardware and make sure that it matches the PDF file. So go to that if you need any information on that. All right, before we install the bumper, we're going to need to remove our front fascia. In order to do that, we have some pins up here with this trim, and then we're going to have hardware along the top, sides, and bottom. So once we get all of that out, we can unplug some wires, undo some clips, and pull the front fascia off. And then from there, we can take off our bottom section and install our bumper. All right, our first step is removing this top trim. In order to do that, we need to get rid of all these push pins. So we just push down on these, and I recommend prying these up to get them out, because if you do just lift up on the plastic, they have a habit of popping everywhere. So this is what they should look like when they're pushed in and ready to be popped out. All right, we have a few 10mm head bolts up here, so we're gonna remove those real quick. All right, we got the vehicle lifted up so we can remove the hardware along the bottom. In order to do that, we first need to drop our skid plate to gain access to a couple bolts here. The OEM, you might not have to, but just check and make sure. Small aluminum skid plate, there's 6 10mm bolts on that, so we're gonna take this off. All right, we also have a black trim piece under here that needs to be taken off, and that's also 10mm bolts. There should be 4 of them. All right, the side trim needs to come off. There's 3 10mm bolts. There's also a push pin that we need to take out, and we also have 2 bolts right here on each side. And then while we're down here, we can also remove our tow hook and this little flap. All right, for this clip right here, you should be able to just turn it 90 degrees and then pull it down and out. Now with that, we got both those flaps out of the way. There's also 3 more 10mm bolts right here. And the 2 final bolts are 2, yet again, 10mm bolts. All right, next we need to get our liner disconnected from our bumper and our flare unbolted so that we can pull the front fascia off. And there's 3 push clips, so we'll pop those out, and then there's a 4mm Allen that we need to take out. All right, with those out, we can pull our liner back just enough that we can get to our Christmas tree clips back here, and you can just push the tab, and then they should just pop out really easy. And then after that, we just have our typical push-in pins. So then you just apply a little pressure and they should pop out. And I'm doing just enough so that I could gain access to this last clip that we have behind here. All right, on both sides of the bumper, there should be 2 connectors that we need to undo. You just push down on the retaining clip and then pull out. Although on the other side, there is a connector that's a little more difficult, but I can show you how to do that here in a second. All right, in order to get this plug off on this passenger side, we need to push down on this tab right here, and then we can move the gray tab forward, and that will push the connector off. The last thing we need to do on this driver's side is disconnect our windshield wiper fluid, and this will start leaking everywhere, so be prepared to plug it or bend it over and kink it, or else you're going to make a big mess everywhere. All right, next to pull this front fascia off, we just start on these edges, these corners, and we can pull a little bit, and that should pull the clips out. After that, we can carefully pull the rest off, and we laid out a blanket so we could set it down on without scratching it. And then next, we're gonna work on taking this lower section of the fascia off. Running along this lower section, we have all these white clips, and to get them out, you just push the clip down and then pull out. All right, next we're gonna take off this bash bar, and to do that, we first need to pull off this plastic trim. So you can just pull it, and that should pop off. And then we'll take off the 4 mounting bolts that hold this on. All right, the 4 bolts holding this on are all 17mm. We got 2 on the top, and then 2 on the bottom. And these top 2, it's nice to have a ratcheting wrench to get that off. To bolt these wings onto our bumper, we're going to take our 3/8 carriage bolts and our 5/16 carriage bolt, which goes on the top. All right, when we bolt this wing onto the main bumper, we use 2 3/8 carriage bolts and a 5/16. And if you face them in this way, it makes it a lot easier to get access to these nuts to tighten them. All right, to bolt our front faceplate on, we'll take our 1/4" 20 bolts with the 5/32 head, and we'll put those on, and then we'll use the nylon locking nut to bolt it onto the other side. All right, we're going to install our light bar next using our provided brackets, and then we're going to mount our winch when this is already bolted onto the vehicle, but you'd use these 4 mounting holes located here. The hardware we're going to use to bolt this bumper on are some of the OEM hardware. So these are for our OEM tow hook, but these are going to be used for these 2 holes down here, and then a couple of the bash bar bolts, and those will go in right here. And then we do provide a couple of bolts and nuts, and those will go in through the top and then the nut on the bottom. Alright, next we're going to take off this plastic right here, and that's going to allow us to have better access to put our winch in, and also our controller wire if we do need to use that. All right, now that we got our front fascia on, don't forget to get all your bolts and hardware into it. So there's gonna be the few bolts up top, and then there's gonna be a few clips and a bolt on this side. And don't forget to get your connectors before you get to that. And once you get that all bolted up, we'll move on to trimming our fender liners. All right, the last step is trimming this fender liner. And to do that, I just took a piece of masking tape and taped it straight across the liner. And I did that at the very bottom of this bumper. And then I took a box cutter, or you could use a cutting wheel, whatever you prefer, to cut that across. And that should leave a nice clean look without any liner hanging below the bumper. All right, we took the wheel off to gain a little more access to this, and you can see the masking tape lined out. And I'm just gonna use a box cutter, and I'm just going to slowly cut along that line to get a nice straight line. Well, there it is, the GX550 covert bumper installed. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below, and remember to like and subscribe, and we'll see you out on the trails.